Welcome to the Fidelis Leadership Institute. My name is Grace Nafuna and I am here for another series of our FAT Talks. Together with me is our wonderful guest, Rebecca Kukundakwe, who is a gender specialist with GROW, the GROW Fund, under the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Grace.
Kindly tell me more about yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Rebecca, as you clearly put it, and I'm a gender professional currently serving with the Private Sector Foundation in Uganda. But I'm also a certified gender auditor for private sector enterprises. So basically it's to make sure that the private sector implements good business in a gender responsive way.
Right.
And I'm happy to be here.
Right. Tell us more about, how would you get into the private sector space? What has the journey been like?
It's been a journey of, first of all, commitment to move and create impact. So I've been in different sectors. I've been in the non-profit space. I'm now in the private sector. But for me, the drive is around how do you create social impact, change lives, and positively contribute towards national development. I've also had the opportunity to feature in Uganda's top 40 under 40 this year, just run by the New Vision.
Right.
And so the journey has also involved lots of focus on personal growth. That's been intentional in ensuring that you recognize that these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and then you take it positive and work on improving them. Next to personal growth has been professional development. And one of the things I would tell any professional out there is that every day you have to invest in making yourself better. I'm currently doing my PhD in business administration. I'm focusing on management
that's very
practices.
impressive.
And so for me, I carry all that knowledge and exposure into my role as a gender specialist, and also supporting the private sector to grow their businesses.
Right. Thank you very much. Now that you've talked about the private sector, what does private sector development entail, especially under PSFU?
Yeah, thank you so much. So first, I think it's good to talk about who we are as the Private Sector Foundation Uganda.
Right.
We are an apex body for private sector institutions in this country, and we have a membership of over 300 business associations,
Right.
and reaching over 2 million individual businesses in this country. So we work in all sectors of the economy.
Right.
We have a good representation of who our members are. But our slogan is that business growth is our business. So every day we wake up in the morning and sit on our desks or move wherever we go, we are looking at how we support a man or a woman doing business, grow their business, transit from one level to another, increase their turnover, deal with issues of cost and loss, but also provide opportunities for the Ugandan business sector to grow their markets, to grow their sales, and then to earn, of course, revenue and contribute towards national development. So that said, private sector development then is a very critical aspect for us. And as the Private Sector Foundation, we also work with key public sector agencies.
Okay.
And so private sector development is integrated in the National Development Plan,
Right.
as a key pillar. And so with that, recognize that as the private sector, we contribute towards job creation, contribute towards now gross domestic product, we contribute towards ensuring that there is social welfare among the citizens. You have seen lots of the private sector companies engage in what they call CSR.
Yes.
Corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
But we've also seen most private sector companies actually have foundations or the philanthropy part of it. And all that is meant to ensure that whatever business we do as a private sector also has social impact on the citizens. But largely we exist to make sure that there's revenue in the country. We pay a lot of taxes with the private sector, but also we employ closely to over 70% of the population in this country.
Right.
We are next to the public sector in terms of creating job opportunities.
Job opportunities. This is excellent, and I'm very impressed with the work that PSFU is doing. I mean, I had an idea, but now it has more detail to it, which I greatly appreciate. What would you say is the state of businesses in Uganda?
Of course, when you're discussing the state of business in this country, you also have to pay attention to the trends that have been going on post-colonial period,
Right.
post-independence.
Right.
And then you look at the current trends going on. We have to talk about the socio-economic occurrences, and the very latest one is COVID-19. So the state of business is that it's progressive, but we still see the trickle-down effect, and especially the negative effects of COVID-19
Right.
impacting businesses in this country. That said, we see lots of opportunities in terms of regional markets, international markets.
Right.
There has been lots of support by the government institution in terms of opening up business and markets outside the country. As the private sector foundation in Uganda, we coordinate what we call business summits
Okay.
with neighboring countries
Right.
outside the continent. And the idea is to make sure that businesses here, the private companies here, can access market outside Uganda. So the state of business is, it's kind of a mix. It's progressing, but it's also experiencing lots of shortfalls.
Right.
One of the other key issues within the state of business is the potential for growth, by the way, and stability in terms of revenue growth,
Right.
especially with the interventions that came in after the COVID-19 period, both by the government but also private sector institutions like ourselves. And so the focus still remains on how do you support these businesses to thrive, not to survive,
But to thrive.
to thrive. We are
Right.
aiming at helping businesses transit. We are aiming at helping businesses penetrate more markets. We aim at supporting businesses improve on the quality of the products that they produce. And quality is so important here because if we look at the fact that we're exploring international markets, issues of certification become very
Right.
critical.
Right.
We've had some challenges in terms of perceptions about the Ugandan goods. So as the private sector foundation in Uganda, we keep supporting our members to improve the quality of their services, to do quality assurance strategies, to undergo certification, but also working with government agencies to ensure compliance.
Right.
When you talk about compliance, of course, it usually comes with restrictions with the private
Right.
sector.
Right.
So we do it in a way that we advocate for an enabling environment for businesses to operate, but still in a compliant way.
In a compliant
So
way.
that's what I can say about the state of business. And then in terms of where we see the men and women in the businesses, of course we are still a patriarchal society, and we see lots of male-owned businesses
Yeah.
being among the large firms. Over 17% of the large firms are only owned by women in this country. But we see more small and medium enterprises, a big number being owned by women. And what does that mean for us as the private sector? It means that when you're doing support services, business development services for these businesses in this country, we have to take note of the fact that there are differences between the male-owned and female-owned businesses. And their needs will be different, the kind of support they would need. So, and we are not only saying we support, let's say, female-owned businesses, we support the male-owned businesses, but also try to work out a mentorship and networking methodology that allows even the females move into what we call the male-dominated sectors. So that,
which are usually the more profit-making.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, we have a very big focus on supporting women-led businesses in this country. But also, as we do that, I think it's important to note that we are not saying we're not supporting male businesses.
Yes,
We are prioritizing those male-led businesses. But overall, all our support services in terms of a neighboring environment benefits all the private sector players, whether owned by male or female.
Excellent. And I think also one of the things that struck out to me in terms of statistics is that our businesses are not sustainable.
Beyond
They don't make their 5th birthday.
Yeah.
So what do you have to say about that? What are some of the issues that have held back SMEs in Uganda?
Yeah. That's a very interesting topic because my doctoral study is actually around SMEs.
Right.
But one of the issues we see is it begins from the culture of entrepreneurship in this country. I think while the Mastercard Foundation Economic Index rates us as one of the countries with the highest entrepreneurship rate, like on each day, Ugandan will think of starting a new business, providing a different service. we don't have yet the resilience and the zeal to sustain these businesses. So it's about the entrepreneurship culture that we have in this country. The second factor is around the support system. So you wake up and start a business in a given area, but you don't do enough market research. Then after investing lots of startup capital, you realize that maybe this is not sustainable, or I can't manage these costs, and so on, and then you leave. But if you have done a market research, we find that there are SMEs, there are companies that do market research, and over time, despite the challenges, they are able to survive, to stay in, and within 3 years, they take off, because it's also a journey. The other issue contributing towards low survival rate for businesses is the tax regime. And it's such a contentious issue, I know, but what, for example, institutions like private sector foundation advocating for is the whole discussion around the startup policy. How can government provide an enabling environment for startups, for businesses that are trying to be incubated, survive in terms of reduced tax burden, in terms of compliance? How do government institutions actually come in to support and enhance the work of some of these small businesses to be able to celebrate their birthdays? But also for us as the private sector foundation, we've done a lot of investment. Of course, especially with the support of the government of the Republic of Uganda, for which we are grateful for. We are implementing lots of projects that provide business development services, that provide entrepreneurial services to help these businesses thrive. From simple things like how you're managing your finances in the business. Are you separating business money
from personal?
From personal money?
Yes, that's
how
very
are you
pertinent.
keeping your records in terms of, this is the cost on raw materials, this is my cost of production, this is the revenue I'm getting from sales. So actually the business money is the cost of production minus the sales, the revenue. So we are doing lots of interventions to support these businesses grow, but also we are trying to invest in what we call market research to understand and give information to the entrepreneurs in this country in some of the most profitable businesses, or even if they have to go to each type of sector, what are the considerations? And that takes me back to the point I made that as the private sector work in different sectors. So in that we have what we call sector associations. Let's talk about the one on tourism, construction, agriculture. So those groups engage in technical discussions, real life business issues that can help their members maneuver through some of the challenges. So that's part of the way of creating an enabling environment in addition to advocacy. So the benefit we see in that is that business people, entrepreneurs in the same field are able to connect and learn from each other. And get access to information on the markets, on the sources of raw materials, on the service providers that actually provide quality services. So with that, we are trying to respond to the issue of businesses not surviving.
And I'd like that you mentioned partnerships both for the PSFU and also within the business ecosystem. You can only do so much, alone. But if businesses, especially for women entrepreneurs, but also I see that you have partners beyond Uganda. You're part of the COMESA and the East African Business Council. Kindly shed more light on that.
So like I said, the Private Sector Foundation represents as an apex body of the private sector companies in this country. And we know that Uganda is part of so many regional and international bodies. So by that, we carry the mandate of representing the private sector in all those spaces. We've talked about COMESA, the East African community, there's the one at regional level, continental level, even globally. So what we are trying to do particularly is the issue of markets, is the issue of attracting investors. Back to the percentages and numbers around businesses in this country, they can only thrive if they get sometimes social investors, or if they get partnerships that are interested in working with them, and this does not have to be in the country. So as PSFU, we play a very big role. We take leadership in trying to open up some of these opportunities for our members. But also we support private sector companies. We encourage private sector companies to take part in international expos, international business conferences, not to go and learn, but also to actually network. And we actually encourage private sector members, when you go with a target, if you're into construction, if you're into real estate, if you're into tourism in agriculture, and we also provide what you call data on who are the market leaders in a given sector. If, for example, it's tourism, maybe it's the UK. So how do you ensure that you build networks with sister agencies, with other private sector leaders in a given country?
Right. No, that's very clever. So how does PSFU maintain institutionalized dialogue with the government of Uganda? You've hinted on that. It's you advocacy and policy, but perhaps you could shed more light.
One key fact is that as the private sector foundation, we are a key and one of the trusted implementing partners for most and some of the government of Uganda funded projects and programs. And we've gained this stature over the years. So you realize that, but also the National Development Plan recognizes public-private partnerships. Even in the scholarly world, there's a recognition on the importance of public-private partnerships. Because globally, it's been difficult for governments to provide both social and economic services on their own. So we believe in the same model as PSFU, and as a fact, we work closely with major public sector agencies in this country, and we also try to kind of ensure a cordial relationship between the private sector and the public sector, especially where compliance issues come in, especially where, let's talk about taxation, especially where there's always different priorities. As private sector, we want to make profit. Yes. But then as the public sector, we want to provide social services. And so over time, we've learned to say, how do we work in a partnership, in a collaboration that does not disentangle each of our basic priorities, our major foundations for profit maximization, profit generation, and social service delivery. It's worked very well with the government of Uganda, implementing some projects, but also in different collaborative interventions.
Excellent. You are very articulate on this. I can see that you've done it for a while. So the other question is, in what ways is PSFU working with the UNDP to support private sector development? I think the UNDP and MasterCard have been key.
Yes, they're one of our core partners.
But also the World Bank. So perhaps you could shed more light.
That's a very interesting discussion because, like I mentioned, the private sector, we are able to support businesses grow because we have the support of development partners. And namely, I've clearly pointed out the UNDP, which has been a partner of PSFU for so many years, in terms of promoting issues around trade, cross-border trade, but also ensuring that countries can actually break barriers that hinder us from accessing markets and getting knowledge from other countries, the FCTA program. But also the UNDP has been fundamental in supporting the gender-responsive aspect of the private sector. So they run this program called the Gender Equality Seal, together with the Ministry of Gender, the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Gender and the private sector. And we aim at supporting the business community, do good business. And we have slogans like, it's only good business if it's human sensitive, if it's gender sensitive, and so on. And through the intervention of the Gender Equality Seal, for example, we've had over 90 companies adopt and undergo the Gender Equality Seal exercise. It's a very deep intervention, the level of analysis. So for the private sector companies that sign up to this, they open up to discussions on checking how is the percentage of men and women in your leadership position. In corporate, it checks out corporate governance issues, it checks out integrity issues in these companies, it checks out issues around maternity and paternity leave. Maternity and paternity leave. It talks about
so it's not just a women's thing.
So we are trying to promote the notion that a business to thrive and do good business needs to pay attention the welfare of its staff, both male and female.
Both male and female.
By doing that, we are informed by the context analysis that shows more issues to do
Right,
with the female.
to do with the female.
So the UNDP has been a very key partner in this intervention, reaching over 90 companies in this program, and it's a global program.
Okay.
For the companies that undergo this, they get what we call a seal. Now,
Right.
you know the power of a seal.
Yeah. Stamp
So
of
it's kind
approval.
Exactly, some form of approval that they're
Yes.
actually doing good business. So it puts them at a better position in terms of negotiation, but also there's a clear link we've learned through this intervention with the NDP that there's a connection between having a gender-sensitive program and increasing productivity, profitability, and the performance of the company.
Right.
So a company that's focusing on the performance of their staff and the welfare gains higher productivity and ultimately profitability within the global business sector. And now speaking about the Mastercard Foundation, it's one of development partners for the private sector foundation,
Right.
and supporting the reaching out of creating work opportunities for over 300,000 young people in this country. It's
Well, that's a huge number.
It's a very huge number, and it's really, we really see massive impact that is coming through in terms of addressing the youth unemployment question in this country, but also has a particular focus on reaching young women
Okay.
between 18 to 35.
Right.
So if you look at the demographics again of this country, we know that over 51% are female, 49% male. We don't know how the statistics
Right.
are going to come out
In the coming census,
Yes,
yes.
so that the Young Africa Works program, we get support from the Mastercard Foundation as the private sector to create work opportunities for 300,000 young people in this country, in different sectors of the economy. And of course, for the World Bank, it's been a very long time frame
Right.
now of the private sector and through PSFU. It's a long history with the World Bank that I've learned that we know, including how the private sector foundation in Uganda actually started. But we have running interventions with the World Bank on promoting private sector competitiveness, but also supporting women entrepreneurs. And we are excited. We hope to reach over, for example, for the women entrepreneurs, to reach over 60,000 women in this country, move from one level of business from a small to medium and large micro, small and medium enterprises. And this will happen over the 5-year period.
Excellent. I am impressed on so many levels, especially because, you know, at Fidelis Leadership Institute, we are passionate about young people and areas of leadership in all areas of your life, business, workplaces. So for our leaders in business, this is a very pertinent conversation and something that hopefully they can participate in. You will shed more light on how, you know, we can take advantage of PSFU as young people to grow our businesses. But for now, I will take a short break and come back with Rebecca Kukundakwe, who is a gender specialist with the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Thank you, Rebecca.